Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're clicking it on and checking out our presentation, Paying for College, A Guide to the Financial Aid Process. My name is Eric Danielson, and I'm with ICANN. ICANN is a nonprofit organization that helps students and families go through this financial aid and career and college planning process. We've been around for 20 years now and have been doing this program here for the Ames High School and surrounding areas for many years now, and appreciate the opportunity to give you some information. This financial aid program, like all the ICANN financial aid programs, is sponsored by Iowa Student Loan. They're a major funder of ours. As a nonprofit organization, all the help that we do with students and families is at no cost, but a way of doing that is by great supporters like Iowa Student Loan. So we do appreciate them sponsoring this financial aid program tonight. What we're going to go through with you is a little bit about the financial aid process, as I'd mentioned, and problem areas that arise. We do have a couple of pieces of material that you can download on our website at icansucceed.org, ready to file the FAFSA flyer, where you can actually see and have a list on what you would need to complete this form when the time comes, as well as our Paying for College guide, that you will see some page numbers on some of the slides that I have, because we do this presentation a lot within the high schools themselves in front of audiences, and we'll have these materials for them. This is a little bit different, so you would be able to download them at our website in our materials library, again at icansucceed.org. We do also have many locations throughout the state of Iowa for help. I think for most of you watching this program, probably the closest one for you is going to be on the DMAC Ankeny campus. We're located in building number 5. That's also the Trail Point Fitness and Conference Center there. Appointments are required, and you can make an appointment by calling or visiting our website at icansucceed.org/APT to set up an appointment when the time comes to help you out with this process. Now, my main focus within this program here today is going to be doing an overview on the financial aid process itself. That's probably the most important thing that we can talk about, is making sure that you know where the process starts and that you do it in the timely manner that you need to. I am going to discuss a little bit about understanding the calculation and college costs, what to do after doing the financial aid form, and a little bit about financial aid sources and programs and scholarship information that I want to give to you. But the main focus is going to be the process itself. Now, as we begin with that process, one thing that I do want to mention, when I use the term financial aid isn't just the free money. Now, that's a part of it. Gift aid, grants or scholarships based on merit awards like academics, athletics, or artistic ability, or need-based awards, having a high financial need due to the form that we're just going to be talking about here in a second. The financial aid does also include the self-help aid, the loans. To get the loans, once you get the loans, you're going to have to pay the money back. That's part of the self-help there. And then the work study. If you were offered work study doing an on or off-campus job at a school that you're attending, to get that money, you must put in the hours to do the work to get it as well. So these are the two types of categories that we use for financial aid. And when I use the term financial aid and applying for financial aid, these are the two types of aid that I am going to be referring to. Now, as I begin talking about the application process here, one thing that I do want to mention, at this time of year, we start going out and presenting to junior families and getting ready for them to do this process in the fall of 2019. If there are any senior students and families that are watching this program, you should be doing the FAFSA as soon as possible if you have a student going to college in the fall of 2019, if you have not completed that yet. So as I talk about some of these things, I'm going to be talking as if I'm talking to junior students and families in getting ready to fill out a form for the 2021 college year that they're going to start in the fall of 2019. But if you're any other, whether a sophomore that's going to be in 2 years, you can kind of move along some of the dates that I'm talking about in your mind for then, if they're going off in 2021 and 2022, But for seniors, this would be something you would need to start the process and going in right now. So just wanted to mention that, but as I go through with this, I'm kind of going to be talking as if I'm gearing it for junior families and getting ready for next fall of 2019 to fill out the financial aid form. And what is that financial aid form? It is called the FAFSA Form. Many of you might have heard of it before from other families. Maybe there are some clicking on that have done it in the past for other kids that you have. But the FAFSA Form stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. This is the application that is going to be required to apply for federal aid, but also some state and institutions themselves require the FAFSA to get their financial aid as well. So in other words, some states utilize this form to award their state aid. Iowa is one of those, which that is the case for some of their state aid, needs to have the FAFSA on file, as well as the colleges. Even colleges that might be offering merit-based awards to a student, academics, athletics, artistic ability, which usually can be given no matter what this form says. Some colleges will still want it on file before they'll give that, just to make sure the student exhausts all their options for being able to get financial aid. What the FAFSA form is going to get into is a snapshot of the family's financial situation. For junior families, next fall when you're senior families and filling out this form, it is going to get into your 2018 tax information for both the student and the parents. Now again, I'll mention, if there are any senior families right now that are listening to this and need to fill out a FAFSA form for the 2019-20 school year, what you would use on the form for 2019 and 20 would be your 2017 tax information to fill that out. But for junior families listening to this right now, for 2021 FAFSA form school year, it's 2018 tax information that is going to be required. Now, one of the things that I always like to address early on in one of these presentations that we get, do you have to file a FAFSA? I want to say technically, or I should say technically no, if you're planning on just paying for it out of pocket, then in writing the check, you certainly don't have to. But these are the reasons why we feel you should always fill it out. And one thing I do want to mention now, and I probably will mention again, you do have to do a FAFSA form each year that a student is attending college. So every year, and for junior families, next fall of 2019 will be the first time you'll fill it out, but every year that a student attends college, you've got to do a new form with new tax information within the form. But the reason why we'd always like to see families fill it out is, first of all, it is required for the federal student loans. No matter what your family's financial situation is, students, by having a FAFSA form on file, would qualify for the federal student loans, what's also known as direct loans or direct Stafford loans. Those are usually going to be the first loans that a student should take out if they would need any loan money at all. To do that, you've got to have a FAFSA form on file. So that's one reason. Even if you don't need the loans, it's always good to have it on file just in case if something would come up to be able to do. Another reason is it is required for some state of Iowa aid. The Iowa Tuition Grant, KIBI Grant, and Voc Tech grants. Tuition grant for Iowa students attending a private school in the state of Iowa. KIBI and Voc Tech grant. These are for students that are attending a community college, getting into specified Voc Tech fields. These are possibilities for the students, but if they do not file a FAFSA form, then they definitely won't receive it. So it's not those state of Iowa aid, it's not a given that a student will get it, but the application to see if they're eligible for those 3 awards, you've got to have a FAFSA form on file. And then the other reason, I kind of mentioned it earlier, some institutions might require it to be on file even to give their institutional money, even the money that can be awarded no matter what the FAFSA form says. The merit-based awards, academics, athletics, and artistic ability. So for these 3 reasons, we'd like to see every family fill it out. Not just the first year that a student's going on to college, but remember, every year that a student attends college, a new FAFSA form with new tax information on there. Now, when the FAFSA form will begin, when you're going to be able to fill it out, for the junior families, when your senior families next fall of 2019, when you would be able to begin the 2020-2021 FAFSA form is going to be after October 1st. It used to be January 1, but 3 years ago they changed it and moved it up 3 months, what we call an early FAFSA. So now it's going to be after October 1. So October 1 of 2019, you will be able to fill out, again, a 2021 FAFSA form at that time. And depending on the college or colleges that a student is looking at, you might need to get it in fairly quickly. I'll talk about that in a second here. Where you would go to be able to fill out a FAFSA form is FAFSA.gov. FAFSA.gov, you go there and you can kind of see it on this slide right here. They did a new look this past summer, and that's what the new look looks like. Starting here, logging in if you're a returning user, 99.9% of the families fill out a FAFSA form now online, and that is the way we would like to see you do it. When we help families in our offices fill it out, we do the process online. There is now a phone application that you can do it on a phone app now and being able to fill it out. And it's something that can be very handy for students and families who maybe the phone is the only thing they have within the household, and to be able to do the application. But I know within our offices where we've got our computers, we just go online to that website and we can fill it out for you. Now, when you're going to have to file the FAFSA, it begins after October 1, but when you actually need to get it done as a family, depends on the college or colleges that a student is looking at. On our website and within our booklet, or we even have this just within our website, we have a list of what's called priority dates for the Iowa colleges and universities. Every school is going to have a certain priority date. The priority date is when that college would like to have the student have the FAFSA completed and submitted online in by. And different schools and universities are going to have different priority dates. The reason why these priority dates are so important is if you get in the FAFSA by a priority date of a college or colleges that you are looking at, that is the best way to ensure you get the most financial aid coming to you. And so if you're applying to multiple schools, you are going to want to use the earliest priority date of whatever colleges that you are looking at. Just to give you an example here, the two schools in the state of Iowa that have the earliest priority dates are the University of Iowa and Iowa State. They have December 1 priority dates for getting in the FAFSA form. Not only for new students, but even for the returning students as well. So you will want to make sure if you're looking at one or both of those schools, along with other schools, to get your FAFSA submitted in by December 1. If you go beyond December 1 with that example, or any college or university that you are looking at for a priority date, if you go beyond that priority date, it does not mean you won't get any financial aid at all. But you might miss out on some of the institutional aid that school has. And again, the best way to ensure that a student gets the most financial aid coming to them, beat the priority date or dates of whatever colleges that they are looking at. And now that the FAFSA started earlier, and what they're looking for is really tax year that's 2 years behind. They are going to be, for the 2021 school year, wanting your 2018 tax information on the form. For almost all families, those are going to be taxes you've already got completed anyway. So even though some of those priority dates might sound very early, should be no problem after October 1 to still get the FAFSA in by them, because it's asking for taxes that, again, almost all families are already going to have completed. These are some tips for filing the FAFSA form. Always having your federal taxes and W-2s on hand. Some of you listening to this might have heard, well, I heard we can pull our information in directly from the IRS within the FAFSA form. There is that capability that I'm going to mention in a few slides in a little bit later, which is true, but it's always still good to have your federal taxes and W-2s on hand, because there are some questions that even if you can use that data retrieval, won't pull in the information. There'll be some questions on there that'll happen, and occasionally the data retrieval doesn't work, and if it doesn't work, then you can manually enter in the information from the federal taxes and W-2s as well. When we're helping students and families in our offices, hopefully we can use the data retrieval, but even if we do, we tell them we need your federal tax returns and W-2s, because there is some information on there that it will not be brought over. The other thing that I want to mention with this slide is the very last one. Again, one more time, you've got to complete the FAFSA each year. Every year, new form, new tax information. Every year that a student is going to be attending college, you'll need to do it again for them to apply for financial aid. And sometimes those priority dates at the colleges and universities, Even for new students, they're the same for the returning students as well, and you want to make sure that you don't miss out on any financial aid that could be coming to you. So it must be completed each year. Now, getting into a little bit about the FAFSA form and some problem areas that do arise. This again is the front page when you go to FAFSA.gov, what it's going to come to. The very first part, when you're able to log in, and that gets into the student's general information and also talks about or asks the questions, what college or colleges do they want to send the information into? I don't have any slide on that. I just wanted to tell you that up to 10 colleges is what can be listed. And if you only have one, you can just list one down, but up to 10 is what can be listed. Most colleges won't do anything with the information until you've applied and been accepted. But one of the reasons why they moved up allowing students to be able to fill out the FAFSA form earlier was they wanted them to keep their options open and to have, list more schools down. And they thought by having it go together with the actual application process into colleges, being more in line with that, would have more students listing multiple colleges down there, again, just to make sure that they don't rule out anything too early. So you can list up to 10 colleges that have the results sent to. After you put that down, what's going to happen next is there are going to be questions that are directed to the student. And again, these are questions that are going to be asked for students that are going to be going off to college in the fall of 2020 and spring and summer of 2021. These are the dependency status questions. And I'll just tell you, most high school seniors, when they're answering these questions, are going to answer no to all of them. And when they answer no to all these dependency status questions, that means they're still dependent and will need to get into parent information. Basically, what these questions are trying to determine is if in the next school year, a student will be 24 years old, if they're going to be married, or if they're married as of the day you're filling it out, if they'll be working on a graduate program in 2021. Are they currently on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces for purposes other than training or a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces? If they have any children who will receive more than half their support from them between July 1 of 2020 and June 30th of 2021. That is a key there I want to say on that question. They must be supporting the child over half their support. Just having a child doesn't make a student independent automatically. They must be providing over half the support for that child to be able to answer yes to this question. And then the last three here, usually if any high school senior can answer yes to one of these questions, even the majority won't, but if any high school senior could, it would be one of these last three. At any time since you turned 13, were both your parents deceased, were you in foster care, or were you a dependent or ward of the court? As determined by a court in your state of legal residence, are you or were you an emancipated minor or in a legal guardianship? At any time on or after July 1 of 2019, were you homeless or at risk of being homeless? If any student can answer yes to just one of any of these questions, they would be independent and would not need parent information on the form. Now again, for high school seniors, if any of them can answer yes, it's usually these last three on this slide here. What we tell students is you're going to be independent, you won't need parent information, but have the documentation ready. The college or colleges that you are putting down wanting to have the FAFSA results sent to will ask for documentation later about being in the foster care or legal guardianship or designated in a homeless situation by, say, like a school liaison, high school liaison as one possibility. So get that documentation ready for when the colleges do ask for it. But if you answer yes, you would not need any parent information on the form. Again, though, the majority of high school seniors are going to answer no to all this. And then the next thing we'll get into is parent information on the form. It begins with general parent information, but the first thing we need to do is consider who is the parent on the FAFSA form. On this slide, as you see, if parents are widowed or single, you're just going to answer questions about that one parent. If a widowed parent is remarried as of the day you're filling out the form, then answer questions about that parent or step-parent. Even if that parent wasn't remarried in 2018, and that's the tax year that's being asked about, that doesn't matter. It is, if you're married as of that day, we would need questions about the parent and then the step-parent's tax information from 2018. One of the big questions that we get a lot, and there's a lot of misconceptions about this one, is when the parents are divorced or separated, then who needs to fill out the FAFSA form? If the parents are divorced or separated, you answer questions about the parent that the student lived with the most during the past 12 months from whenever you're filling out the FAFSA form. So you don't just look at 2018, even though that's the tax year that's being asked about. If you're filling out the FAFSA in October or November or December of 2019, you look at the last 12 months from whenever you're filling out the form, and whichever parent lived with that student the most, that is the parent's information that goes down on the form. So let's say if that was the mother and the mother's not remarried, just the mother's information is going to be included on the FAFSA form. Now, if the parent that is responsible for filling it out is remarried as of the day you're filling out the form, then you do have to answer questions about that parent and the step parent as well, even if they weren't married during the tax year that's being asked about. If they got married the day before that you're filling out the FAFSA form, we would need the parent and step parent's information, general and tax information from 2018, being put down on the FAFSA form in that case. I did want to address now the middle section there. If you do not live with one parent more than another, then, if that's the case, if you live equally with each parent, my first question is always, is it truly equal? Because in some way, we ideally need to determine which parent you live with the most in the last 12 months, even if it's one more day. But if it's truly equal, the next thing you're supposed to look at is which parent provided more financial support during that last 12 months from whenever you're filling out the form, and use that parent's information on the taxes. One big misconception that we hear a lot is, families will ask us and say, well, I heard the parent that needs to fill out the FAFSA in a divorce or separated case is the one that claimed the student on their income taxes it's being asked about. That is not the case. That is not right. It does not matter which parent claimed them on their income taxes. The parent that needs to fill out the form in a divorce or separated situation is the parent the student lived with the most in the last 12 months on there. Something I think I kind of forgot to address, if the parents are married or biological parents are unmarried but living together, then we do include both parents' information on the form when filling the FAFSA out. Once you determine what parent or parents' information needs to go down, they'll enter their general information. And one question they'll get will be household size. You're going to include the student, the parents in the household, the number of children and other who live with and will receive more than half their support from parents. Many times this is cut and dry, but the last bullet point I did want to point out. Do include any children who can answer no to all the dependency status questions. If there's a student that's 21, 22 years old, and they're living on their own, might even be supporting themselves, if they plan to go back to college and they answer no to all the dependency status questions, they would still need parent information on the form. Because that's the case, if you have a student next year that is filling out this FAFSA and they have a brother or sister that would answer no to all the dependency status questions, even if they're not living with the parents, you would be able to still include them in the household. Because again, if they tried to go back to college, they would need parent information on the form anyway. So they can be counted in the household in that situation. And sometimes, for some families, that is one that they have missed out on. And quite honestly, the higher the number you have for household size, the better it is for you as a family with the way this form is worked out. So we want to make sure that you count everyone that you legally can according to the FAFSA rules in that household size. Next thing, I don't have it on this slide right here, but what I will mention is it does get into then parents' 2018 tax information. Their adjusted gross income, what father and mother has earned from working, if it's both parent information that's going to go down on the form, income tax paid, number of exemptions. These would be questions that if you're able to use this IRS data retrieval process in the FAFSA form and bring in your tax information in, the majority of that would be able to be just brought over directly from the IRS. But earlier I had mentioned we still like to see tax information that you have bringing in your taxes and W-2s because not everything can transfer over. Well, one thing I did want to mention is if the parents are married or unmarried but living together, so we're including two parent information on the form, when they file a joint tax return, what their wages, salaries, and tips are on that 1040 is combined. Well, on the FAFSA form, it'll ask what parent 1 and parent 2 earned from working. We've got to split that out. And the way that we do that is by looking at the W-2s, or sometimes even looking at the Iowa taxes, which usually break it up. But we need to see that tax information because that is not something that will be transferred over. Since it's combined on the federal form and we need to break it up, we are going to have to manually put that information in no matter what. So that is one question why we want to make sure, if you're getting help from us doing it yourself, to have your taxes, your federal taxes and W-2s on hand, because not every question will be able to be brought over using this IRS data retrieval tool. Now, after you fill in the questions about the 2018 taxes for the parents, the next thing it's going to get into are asset questions. There are going to be 3 asset questions. They're going to ask, as of today, what do you have for cash savings and checking? As of today, what do you have for current investments? And then as of today, what do you have for business and or investment farm value? Now, all 3 of those questions begin with the words as of today. It means the day that you're filling out the form, whether October 1, October 15th, December 1, December 25th. I don't know why you'd want to do it on Christmas Day, but if somebody wants to, they certainly can. Whatever the day it is, as of today, what do you have for these investments? Now, before I go over these investments, I should also mention, after you answer the investment questions for the parents, then it's going to get into students' 2018 tax information and student investment questions. And the questions are going to be the same. So as I'm talking about these investment questions, just know that both the student and the parent separately are going to be asked these questions. And a lot of times I know they apply more to the parents than they do the students, but both of you will be asked these same questions. And let me take the last one I mentioned first on the slide here, business and or investment farm. If you have a business and or investment farm and you have to include that as far as a net worth, these are the things that you're going to need to include. Market value of land, building machinery, equipment, inventory, but they want to know net worth, value minus debt. Now that debt only means those debts for what the business or investment farm was used as collateral, but they are looking for net worth, value minus debt. So if you have farmland that you have to count and it's worth $200,000, but you still owe $100,000 on it, then $200,000 minus the $100,000, $100,000 is what you'd put down for the net worth. If it was worth $200,000 and you still owed $200,000 on it, net worth would be 0. That would cancel it out. So net worth, value minus the debt. Now, saying that, we want to point out, first of all, with the business part of that question. Do not include a business that you own and control, over 50% of the business, and have fewer than 100 full-time employees. So if you own and control a small business, you own 50.1% or more of that business, and have fewer than 100 full-time employees, you do not have to count anything for that business. In fact, if you family own and control a small business and have 100 fewer employees, you don't have to count that business as an asset. And family owned and controlled really just means about any way you can be related to someone, directly or related by marriage within there. So 50.1% or more and less than 100 full-time employees, you would not have to count the business, the net worth of the business as a value, which quite honestly for most small business owners that we help out with, they usually fall under that category. The farm question. Now this one, especially in the state of Iowa here, is always a little bit more tricky. Do not include a farm that you live on and operate. So if you're a family farmer and you live on and operate the family farm, you would not have to include anything down here for an investment farm value. A family farm, including the equipment, livestock, would not be included as an investment at all. Now, saying that, I also have to caveat it with, we know a lot of family farmers, especially nowadays, do not fall into this category. There are some that do live on and operate the family farm, but many might not live on the farm at all, or they live on part of the family farm, but they have many other pieces of farmland that they own that is not contiguous with what they live on and operate. And so anyone that has farmland where they don't live on it, but they own and operate it, if you fall under that category, what we would suggest you do is to contact the college or colleges that your student is looking at to see how they want you to answer this question. Because this is where we get into a term what we call professional judgment. Colleges are the ones, and the universities themselves are the ones that are allowed to do kind of professional judgments in certain situations. And so this is one area that some colleges may look at doing a professional judgment. If you don't live on it, but you own and operate it, there could be some colleges that'll tell you, the form says live on and operate. If you don't live on it, you got to count it, net worth, value minus the debt. And so they would look at it that way, would not do a professional judgment, and have you count anything you didn't live on and operate yourself. There would be other colleges, though, that might say, as long as you operate it yourself, we feel that that's what the break was meant for, with the family farmers not having to count anything. So we don't want you to count it, or they'll initially have you put down a number for net worth, and then they'll pull it off later to document a professional judgment. The colleges, though, that are doing that are making their own professional judgments, and so you would need to talk with every college that a student is listing down on the FAFSA to see how they would look at it. And you might get two different answers, and if a college wants you to count it, go ahead and list it. The ones that don't want you to count it can pull it off later doing this professional judgment. But it is up to the college's judgment in this case, and there's a few other examples of professional judgments I'll talk about here in just a bit as well, but this is one of them. And I know a lot of now family farmers here in Iowa would fall under this category and need to check with their schools about it. So if you are in that position and you don't live on farmland that you own and operate, contact the colleges directly to see how you do it. If you live on and operate it, you don't have to count it. If you have farmland that you do not operate yourself, that's going to be considered an investment farm. And again, they're going to want you to put down the net worth, the value, minus the debt. The middle question for assets that I mentioned was about investments. What do you have for current investments? Now, here's a list of investments that you'd have to count. Real estate, trust funds, UGMA and UPMA accounts, CD, stocks, bonds, 529 plans. All of these are investments that you would have to count. Let me mention the investments that you would not include. The home that you live in, you would not count as an investment, as well as retirement accounts, life insurance values. So these are, especially the home and the retirement, are two big ones that you do not have to count the investment down for this. And again, I mentioned earlier that both students and parents are going to be asked these questions. For parents, you're actually going to have an asset protection allowance first before any of your assets are looked at. So when you're doing the FAFSA form, you're going to get a question before your assets that is going to say, do your current investments exceed, and then a certain amount of money, $19,000, $20,000, $15,000. What that allowance is based on is the age of the older parent in the family. If you don't go above that allowance, then you put no, and actually the asset questions will be skipped for you. Now, students do not have an asset protection allowance, so they'll be asked these questions right away on the form and need to list anything down that they would need to. But as parents, you'll have an allowance first. Now, not all parents are right, but a lot of families that we work with in filling out the FAFSA form, when you don't have to count the home that you live in or retirement accounts, don't go above and beyond the allowance that's given to them. Not everyone, some do, but many, many don't. So did want to point out the investments that you did not have to count. Now, I did want to go back to the investments that you included. Again, parents will be asked these questions and students will. There's one on here, the education savings accounts, the 529 plans like College Savings Iowa here in this state. These are investments that you would have to include, but the question comes up, okay, I've got to include them. Which side do I include them on? Is that a student investment or is that a parent investment? Well, the way 529 plans are set up, whoever sets them up for the student's the beneficiary. Whoever sets them up is the account owner. So if a parent has set up the 529 plan for the student, they're the account owner. And the 529 plans go on the account owner side on the FAFSA. So anything that a parent that is on the FAFSA has set up for their son or daughter, they would need to include that. And in fact, they would actually need to include all the 529 plans where they're the account owner, not just for the students whose FAFSA that they're filling out. Now that might seem unfair, but remember, that's usually still better than counting the one on the student side if you have to count multiple, because the parents are given allowance first before anything is going to be looked at. The other thing I'll mention with 529 plans is some students may have a grandparent or aunt or uncle, somebody else saving money for them in a 529 plan. And the grandparent, for example, they're the account owner. Well, there's nowhere here on the form we have to count grandparents in for asset information. So actually those 529 plans would not be counted. The only time that they would be taken into account would be if there was a distribution during a tax year that's being asked about to help pay for the students out of that 529 plan, then there's actually an untaxed income in question on the form, money paid on your behalf, not reported elsewhere on the form, that you would have to include that distribution. But as far as the entire amount of the 529 plan in a grandparent or aunt or uncle's, those would not go down as an asset because they are the account owner. I think the reason is those type of assets can be easily transferred to other students or someone else the way they're set up, so they do not make you count them. UGMA and UTMA accounts, just real quickly, they're set up differently. Even if a student can't touch them till later, the way they're set up, they're still considered the student asset if it's in an UGMA or UTMA account. Again, if you ever have any questions on investments to include or not to include, please feel free to contact us at ICANN and we can help you through that, because that is a common misconception on some of the things that are out there. Now, there are some untaxed income questions as well. The one that I just wanted to bring up for this presentation is in question number 94, right now on the FAFSA form, where it's going to ask payments to a tax-deferred pension or retirement savings plan. I mentioned earlier, as far as your assets, retirement accounts will not be included. But there is some untaxed income that deal with retirement accounts that you will have to include. And that is going to be the money that you had deferred, untaxed, into a 401k, 403b, some type of retirement account. They do want you to list that as untaxed income. So for 2018, you will need to list down what you contributed to your tax-deferred pension or retirement account. This statement right here, what most W-2s will look like, you see in box 12A through 12D, there were different code letters, D, E, F, G, H, and S. If those code letters were on there, whatever was after it, you would need to count for this question. On this W-2 right here, we do have $1,200 with the code letter D. Now, we don't have it up here, but one thing we do want to point out with this W-2 is do not count if there are two Ds on there. That is something totally different, more dealing with insurance, I believe, that has been paid for you, but that is not retirement. It would only be that one D on there, or the E, F, G, H, or S that you would include with that question. That is also another question that is not brought over directly using the IRS data retrieval process. So another reason why I mentioned we want to see federal tax returns and your W-2s, because actually this is only going to be on your W-2s. Your untaxed income from a 401k contribution will not be on your federal tax returns. So we want to see your federal taxes and W-2s when we're helping you in filling out this financial aid process. After you fill in the student tax information and asset questions, the last thing that we're really going to need is to electronically sign the form before we submit it off. Now, a way to electronically sign the form that is about, it's going to be 4 or 5 years old now, is with what we call an FSA ID, a Federal Student Aid ID that serves as the electronic signature. Students and one parent each would need to request an FSA ID. FSAID.ed.gov is where you would go to request getting, I should say not request, but registering for a Federal Student Aid ID. It is something that you will create the username and the password, just like you would with any kind of online accounts that you have, banking and credit card, anything that you use a username and password for. This is the same way, but you'll use them for all Federal Student Aid websites, including the FAFSA form. When I would suggest registering for these FSA IDs is September of senior year, getting ready for after October 1. Wouldn't do it now, but I would wait and do it September of senior year, and then you'll have them ready. And always make sure that you save them. As a parent, some of you might already have one from a previous student. You'll be able to use that for multiple students, but each student will need to have their own FSA ID, and each student will also need to fill out their own FAFSA form as well. The biggest pain in trying to complete a FAFSA in the last 4 years since these FSA IDs started has been with FSA IDs have already been created, but the parents lose them, can't find them, whether for the student or the parents, for both. And there is a way of trying to reset them, but then sometimes trying to reset them becomes difficult and it's impossible. And getting a new FSA ID, you can't just sign up for a new one. If you've got one registered to your Social Security number already and even a certain email address, it's not as easy as just recreating a new one. So my encouragement just today is you're going to need to get them. When you do get them, write down, keep them in a safe place, whatever your username and password is, because again, you will reuse them every year. The student attends college, new FAFSA form, new tax information, you're going to need to use those FSA IDs again. If you need any help filling out the FAFSA form, besides our offices I mentioned, throughout the state of Iowa, we always have what we call FAFSA Ready Iowa events at many locations. The website for that is icansucceed.org/FAFSA Ready IA. And I know that there are going to be events October 1 of 2019 through March 15th of 2020. Most of these locations that we've got listed up here have been doing it for many years now, so chances are there will be one, if not more, FAFSA Ready Iowa events where you can get help from experts in filling out your FAFSA form. And at almost all the FAFSA Ready Iowa events, you would not need appointments to be able to get help filling it out. Just what you would need would be to bring in 2018 tax information for students and parents, and Social Security numbers, date of birth, asset information to be able to get the help in filling out that FAFSA form. Now, one other thing too, I wanted to mention one more time before getting into the process after you fill out the FAFSA, what to expect is special circumstances. I talked about the farm situation, could be a quote special circumstance. But here are other kind of examples. Change in employment status, medical expenses not covered by insurance, change in parents' marital status. See, the FAFSA form right now is looking 2 years behind in your taxes from when a student's going to be going off to college. Again, 2018 taxes for FAFSA form for 2020-21 school year. Something could adversely affect a family's financial situation during that time that did not happen in 2018, but it happens in 2019 or even 2020, like parent losing a job, for example. If anything like that would happen, it is the college, not the FAFSA, not even ICANN, it's the college or colleges themselves that a student is looking at that's empowered to make professional judgments on special circumstances. I cannot promise you that they're always going to be able to help out in your given special circumstance. These three examples up here are, I want to say most colleges are going to help out in these situations, but you could hear two different answers. Your special circumstance may not be able to, according to the college, be a special circumstance that they can do anything with. But the worst thing the colleges can do is tell you no. If you feel you have a special circumstance, talk to the schools and just see what can be done, if anything, that a student is looking at. And again, it is just them that you would go to, not FAFSA or anywhere else. You would talk to the colleges or university that a student is looking at. Now, you submit in this FAFSA form. When you do it, get it in by the priority date of the college. The results that are going to come back within a week or two are called a student aid report, or a SAR, summary of all the information collected on the FAFSA. When you get these results, more than likely, it'll let you know by a link that you can get into the student aid report, basically logging back into the FAFSA website where you can access it. But you'll get an email, the student will, letting them know that their student aid report is ready. The colleges that you listed down are also going to get the results, or be able to at least download those results when it's been processed. When the colleges get the results, there may be some more information that they need. About 30% of the students are selected for verification, kind of a check and balance that the Department of Ed has colleges and universities do with some students. So it could involve more documents that the student's going to need to. Whether if they didn't initially, trying to use the data retrieval process in the beginning, maybe getting a tax transcript or a copy of their completed taxes, signed copy of completed taxes and W-2s. It could be school verification forms just to double check information and to fill out. But basically what I wanted to say within this presentation is you could be selected for verification. I wanted to bring up that terminology, and I also want to let you know that if you are selected and the school requires you to give them other documentation, try to get that done as soon as possible. Most colleges cannot do anything with an official award letter or will do anything until you have completed verification if you were selected. And failure to do that could delay, reduce, or even completely cancel your financial aid package. If you ever have any questions, make sure to contact the college financial aid office what they're asking for. Don't procrastinate, ask them, see what they need with that. It does not mean if you're selected for verification that the government or the college thinks you're cheating or anything like that. It's just a check and balance that is done. If there was an error, then a lot of times verification will be able to clean that up and be able to do it. If there wasn't an error, then great, but it's still just a check and balance about 30% of the students have to do. So if you are selected, try to get that taken care of. When the colleges, besides sending this out, when they get your results from the FAFSA, they're going to calculate what your financial need is at the college. Your FAFSA form, the whole reason why you're filling out this form, I probably should have talked about this earlier, but I'll bring it up now, is the government's trying to come up with what they feel your EFC number is. Your EFC, expected family contribution, the amount of money that they feel you as a family could contribute towards a student's education. And so they have a parent contribution, a student contribution, because they break up your information, have different, I'm not going to get into calculations with this presentation today, but they look at a parent and student contribution, what they feel they could contribute, add it together for this EFC number. Now again, EFC number, the expected family contribution, this is what colleges are going to use to determine a student's financial need. The colleges are going to take that EFC number and subtract it off of their cost of attendance. Now, cost of attendance will include tuition, fees, and room and board. A lot of times when we think of what does a college cost, we say tuition, fees, and room and board. But it's also indirect cost, the estimated expenses for books, transportation, and personal expenses. These can vary from student to student, so most colleges will estimate those numbers. Between $3,000 to $5,000, a lot of times, they'll estimate those indirect costs. You put all 5 of them together, and that's what we have a cost of attendance. Well, the college will take that cost of attendance, they will minus your EFC number, and that's your financial need at that particular college. Your EFC number is the same, regardless of whatever college that a student goes to. One thing I should say with the EFC number, probably the majority of you aren't going to are going to agree with that number. We realize that, and what the government says that you could contribute. But that is the number that colleges are going to have to use to determine your need, and so they take their cost minus that EFC number, and that equals the student's financial need. Well, every college will cost a different amount of money. Your EFC remains the same, but what is going to vary? Your financial need. And so one of the things that we always like to point out to students and families, especially in the very beginning of this process in finding a college, is don't rule out that cost of attendance that you see up there, or rule out a college based on that cost of attendance. What that is a sticker price, and not necessarily what you are going to have to pay for. The way this formula is done, the colleges that do cost more, your need is going to be higher, and that might mean more financial aid. Now again, I can't promise you that it always will, but it might mean more financial aid for you. So never rule out a college just based on sticker price. The colleges that cost more, they might be able to provide enough of the gift aid to at least get on the same level playing field as some of the colleges that have started off with lower costs. If you find out that one college is going to cost more than another after going through the process, then I know many of you are going to have to cross that off. But I would not automatically assume that in the very beginning until you have at least went through the financial aid process and see what could be provided. Just to give you an idea, when the colleges determine your financial need, and if you have everything in, then eventually they're going to send an award letter. An award letter is the student's financial aid package. It lists all the grants, scholarships, loans, whatever they're able to receive from the college and usually from the state and federal as well. It's not going to have private scholarships yet. That is something that students will still be earning and would need to let the college know about. But the institutional and federal and state aid are usually listed on the award letter here. When you get award letters, they can really vary in their looks, but what we would like to have families do is, when you get an award letter, take what the direct costs are, the tuition fees and the room and board. Don't worry about those estimated expenses yet. Take the direct costs and then subtract any scholarship or grant money from that direct cost. Any scholarships or grants that a student gets on that award letter, that is the free money, money you don't have to pay back, so subtract that off right away. What we have then is remaining costs. Now you see up here, college A and B, there's a big discrepancy as far as their direct cost. Over $23,000 difference in that direct cost. But after we looked at what college A gave in scholarships and grants and college B did and subtracted off each of their direct costs, now what we have for remaining cost is just over $2,400 of a difference in a remaining cost. Now $2,400 is still quite a bit of money, but it isn't $23,000. And if a student really wanted to go to college A over college B and felt they were going to be more successful there and it was a better fit for them, $2,400 per year probably wouldn't keep many students from going to one college to another, where $23,000 per year definitely would. And how would you have known if you just looked at direct cost and said, nope, no way we can afford college A over B, without going through the process? There are times where students are going to find out that college A and B, the difference in direct cost of $23,000 and the remaining cost could also be $23,000. Yes, that can happen. And when you see that and go through the process, then that is the time where I know the majority of students and families would have to say, nope, we can't afford to go there, and have to cross off college A. But we never want them to do it initially without going through the process first. Because here, how would this student know unless they went through the process that it wasn't as big a difference out-of-pocket expense as what the direct costs are? Go through the process, see what you get, and then if it's too much at the end, that would be the time to cross off a school. The other thing I do want to mention with looking at these award letters is after the remaining costs, subtract anything you can give out of pocket. Personal savings, 529 plans, whatever you're able to give as a family. And now what you have is the amount that you're going to need to borrow. This is one of the things we can do in our ICANN offices, besides helping you fill out financial aid forms, is going over these award letters with you when they do come out. Now that the FAFSA Form has started earlier, there are award letters that can start at the end of November, December, January, February, March, April, all throughout the year. It just depends on the college. So one thing you should check is the college or colleges that you're looking at, ask them when you can expect award letters to be sent to you. If you don't get one in the timely manner that you should, then you should probably contact that college and make sure that there's no paperwork missing. But whenever you get the award letters, if you want help in deciphering those out, that's something else in our offices that we can help you with at ICANN too. But another thing I wanted to point out with this slide is, we had started with the direct costs, and now we got the amount that you might need to borrow. Three things that we hadn't looked at are the indirect costs: the personal expenses, books, and transportation expenses. I mentioned earlier it's about $3,000 to $5,000 is what those are estimated to be at each year. What we'd like to encourage you as a family to do is try to pay for those expenses out of pocket, especially if you have a student looking at a college here in Iowa, where if you can pay for the transportation to and from school, whether a student works, which I think can be a good thing for them, or parents helping them out, combination of both, for personal expenses each month, and then trying to save up for books each semester. Those could be $500, $600. A lot of times you can get them cheaper now. If you want to know how to get the books cheaper at a college or university, ask the returning students that are already there. They can usually give you a good idea about where to look for that. But try to pay for those expenses out of pocket. Because borrowing student loan debt, I know many of you that are listening to this have probably heard about the borrowing debt and the student loan debt now that is in our country, which is out of control. One way that it's gotten a little out of control is because of students borrowing more than maybe what they would need. $10,000, $8,000 to cover your tuition fees and room and board, that's enough right there. Where some students have gotten into trouble over borrowing is, besides that amount to borrow for their tuition fees and room and board, they add another $10,000 for those indirect costs, the books, transportation, and personal expenses. So now, almost, $10,000, $11,000 becomes $15,000 or $16,000 for 1 year. The $8,300 becomes $13,300 for 1 year. And doing that 1 year adds a lot. If you go to a 4-year college and do it all 4 years, that's an extra $20,000 on top of what you're already borrowing for tuition fees and room and board, the remaining costs there. The difference could be between borrowing, $40,000 and $60,000. It really does start to add up there. $40,000 is enough for over 4 years, let alone you add on another 50% of that, and now it becomes $60,000. So that's one way in trying to keep the debt down, paying for those indirect costs out of pocket. Something else that we also kind of getting into borrowing money. Most students are going to need to borrow some amount of money at some time during their college career. One of the things that we want them to make sure to do, because college is still a great, going on and getting education beyond high school. Studies have shown that you're going to have more earning potential, less likely to be unemployed. It's still a great investment. But we also want to make sure that you don't, you get a return on that investment. And one of the things that we want students to start thinking about is the reason why they're going to college. What job are you looking for? And get an estimated starting salary. Do a little research and know what it is. And whatever that starting salary is, then don't borrow any more money in college than what that starting salary is going to be. Then you're going to be able to comfortably afford taking out, or paying back your student loans. One tool that you can utilize to kind of see what your return on college investment would be is a return on college investment tool that Iowa Student Loan has put out, iowastudentloan.org/ROCI tool, Rocky. They call it a Rocky tool. Also, actprofile.org for career research, looking up those careers and starting salaries and finding out what that is going to be. We don't want to talk to students that are already in college about borrowing wisely. If they need it, by all means they do. But we would like to hit the students even before they go on there to not borrow any more than they need to when they're in college. And one thing to do that, to connecting your future career salary and the amount you might borrow, is a tool for the Gameplan, iowastudentloan.org/Gameplan. It is just like what they had with the Rocky tool. This Gameplan tool is a great way to help estimating your career's repayment capability on there. Another tool Iowa Student Loan has put out as well. Once you've selected a college and the award letter, you sign that award letter, return it back to the school. There are payment plan options that you can talk with the financial aid office. Instead of borrowing money, you can do tuition-free payment plans 3 times a semester, once a month for 9, 10 months, whatever they have on there. But you can talk to them if you can give something per month. That could be another way of borrowing less money as well. And I don't think enough students and families take advantage of payment plans that colleges do offer. If you need student loans, you're going to accept it on the award letter or say that you need it. You'll go online to a website, studentloans.gov. To do a promissory note and then complete entrance counseling. To do that promissory note and complete this entrance counseling, you will need your FSA, your Federal Student Aid ID, to do that. Now, just to give you an idea of some sources and programs, I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, ending here. But where the money can come from is the federal government, the state, the colleges themselves, and private resources too. The FAFSA Form really gets the whole ball rolling for the federal, the state, and the college and university. And sometimes private scholarships may ask for FAFSA information too. For federal student aid, if you download our booklet, we've got the page numbers on there. We've got this all on our website. But I did want to mention Pell Grant. A lot of families will ask, how do we get a Pell Grant? To see if you're Pell Grant eligible, students need to fill out a FAFSA form. And if your EFC is low enough, then you could be Pell Grant eligible. When you submit in a FAFSA form, if your EFC is low enough, it'll give you an estimate on Pell Grant money that you could receive. That's really just for this presentation what I wanted to say, just to let you know there's no other application you need to fill out. You fill out the FAFSA form, and that's going to let you know whether you're Pell Grant eligible. I'd also mentioned very early on in the presentation that the student loans are going to be available to students no matter what your family's financial situation is. Students will be eligible for federal Stafford loans. Now, the rates right now, the interest rates that you see on the slide are for the 18-19 academic year. We don't even know what 19-20 is of yet, let alone what 20-21 will be, but that's the interest rate that is there right now. There are two different kinds, subsidized or unsubsidized. Unsubsidized, the student is responsible for the interest. Subsidized, the government pays the interest while in school. The amounts that a student would be eligible for is $5,500 their freshman year, and then $65,000 as a sophomore and $7,500 their junior-senior year. And it shows you what the maximum subsidized amount could be. To get any kind of subsidized amount, you still have to have financial need after any other aid given to you. So some of you could qualify for subsidized, maybe not the full $3,500. There could be others of you, though, if your financial situation and you have no need at a college, that doesn't mean you won't get any Stafford loan money at all. You could still get $5,500. It just would be, all of it would be unsubsidized, where the interest starts accruing right away. You don't begin repaying back those loans until 6 months after you graduate or drop below half-time, although you can prepay them on any time ahead of time without penalty. Now, another federal loan I wanted to mention was the PLUS loan. A PLUS loan is a loan that's actually in a parent's name. There is a credit check on this. Parents that are in bad credit standing can be declined getting a PLUS loan, but if a student would need any after their federal student loan and anything else that a college is able to give to them that they receive, or the federal or state aid, if there still is what we call a gap funding. A PLUS loan has been one way in the past that a lot of families have tried to fill in that gap, borrowing extra money on top of the Stafford loan. If you need to borrow any loan, almost always the Stafford loan is going to be the first one to take out for the students. In fact, I'll show you with right here. The federal Stafford loans, even their interest rate, that's almost going to be the one. But it used to kind of be said that, you know, exhaust all federal options before taking out any kind of a private loan. Well, federal Stafford loan, I would agree with, should be the first one to take out. But where the PLUS loan is as far as interest rate right now, and the other thing that I've shown on this slide, there are fees on the PLUS loan, whatever you borrow, that's going to be up to 4.276%. Over 4% in fees that are going to be withheld with that loan, on top of having almost a 7.6 interest rate right now. There are now more private loan options that would be better for, I would say, at least 80% of the families that are out there that are in good credit standing to be able to take out as far as interest rates, as well as the fees that are withheld too. Right now, just to give you a comparison, Iowa student loan has the interest rates in between here, depending on how creditworthy whether a cosigner for a student would be, or if the parents just take it out themselves. But their interest rate is lower than the PLUS loan, and there's also not going to be the fees that are withheld like the PLUS loan has in the over the 4.2% area. So we've kind of figured to where for every $10,000 borrowed, you could save between a PLUS loan and a private loan here around $3,500 through the life of the loan and fees and interest rate for every $10,000 borrowed. And so right now, the way it is, I would encourage any family, if you need to fill in for gap funding, I would not dismiss a private loan over a PLUS loan right now. If you're in good credit standing, I think the majority of families, it's going to be an option that's going to save you on your interest rate and the fees that are withheld as well. The State of Iowa aid, there is more information at iowacollegeaid.gov that you can take a look at for these programs. I did want to mention, if you're looking at a private school in the state of Iowa, Iowa Tuition Grant Program is a possibility of an award that you could receive. To be able to see if you're able to get it, you've still got to have that FAFSA form on file. So again, an example of Iowa aid that still takes the results from the FAFSA. If you have an EFC number of $13,500 or less, and looking at, again, an Iowa student going to a private school in the state of Iowa, then you would get this year currently a $5,650 Iowa Tuition Grant Award. So that's just one type of aid. VOC-TEC, KIBI grants, The community colleges, getting into specific voc tech fields that are up there too. There are also state scholarships, all Iowa Opportunity Scholarships that have a separate application process. In fact, here is that slide that shows that. You might be eligible, like the voc tech, KIBI grant, and Iowa Tuition Grant. You just need a FAFSA form on file to see if you qualify for those. But some of the other kinds of Iowa scholarships and grants also require this Iowa financial aid application, especially if you are TRIO participants, homeless youth, alternative program or high school grads, were a member of the National Guard, in foster care or subsidized guardianship. Do you actively participate in the state fair? If any of these things, we would encourage you to fill out that Iowa financial aid application. And again, you can find that at iowacollegeaid.gov. There's also a way, after you complete the FAFSA form, there is a link to where you can start your Iowa financial aid application and fill it out after you do the FAFSA form too. If you have any institutional aid based on merit or grant money based on filling out the FAFSA form, if you ever have questions about that, we've talked about this a little bit, contact the admission or financial aid offices to see if you have questions about any types of institutional aid. A lot of their institutional aid, I think, will be based on your academics, athletics, artistic ability information, or from the FAFSA form itself, but there could be some scholarships that have extra applications, and where you're going to find that information are going to be on their websites, or you can, again, contact the admission or financial aid offices to find out more about those. Private scholarships. This is a type of scholarship that I think is underutilized, because a lot of students do not want to put in some of the effort that it needs to take to go for private scholarships. One thing that we suggest students to do during their senior year is, for an hour or maybe even 2 a week, like a part-time job, but a very small part-time job, look for private scholarships. Here's where it places on our website at icansucceed.org/scholarships. We've got different links to scholarship searches. You can do Google searches. You want to check with your school counselors about the local ones, especially in the spring of senior year. Employers, professional organizations, religious organizations, local businesses, all of these are places to check for private scholarships. Sometimes it can be a real quick application that you just fill out. Other times it may require an essay, but any private scholarship that you as a student feel would be a good fit, that you're a good fit for that scholarship and could maybe get it, don't let some of the work that it might take to put into that, persuade you from doing it. If it takes you an hour to do an application and an essay, but you get $500, that's $500 per hour. That's a great job. I would love the job that paid me $500 an hour. So look at it that way. And again, I'm not saying 20 hours a week and do it all at once. 1, 2 hours a week. Having a goal of one scholarship application every week or every other week during the senior year. Over that whole senior year, that's going to be quite a few private scholarships you apply for. And as I'm saying, the more you play, the better chances you have a win. And if you put in 30 hours of scholarship time for looking and applying for scholarships, and you get back out of that 30 hours, you get back $3,000 worth of scholarships. That's less money you've had to borrow, and if my math is correct, then I think that would be $100 per hour, which is still great pay when you look at it that way too. So they're not magically going to appear. It takes some time to look them up and to do the private scholarships, but it can be well worth helping to subsidize your education, even if it's just for 1 year. Anything you get is less money you've got to borrow or come up with out of pocket. In fact, just to let you know too, there can be scholarships for everyone. Now, not all of these are still around, but these are ones that have been that were out there in the past 10 years. And as you see, a Jif Peanut Butter one, a Klingon language. If you're a Star Trek fan, if you're a vegetarian, there's one for you. If you eat meat, there's the Beef Ambassador Program. There can be scholarships for everyone out there. And so really with this slide, I would just encourage you to do some Google searches. Think of things that outside of the box, hobbies, interests that you have. See if there's somebody that is putting out a scholarship for that as well, and something that you can go for. You just never know what is out there. It's so expansive in that. The online websites are great, but there's so much more that can be out there. But again, it will take work to do. We've, in fact, on our website, have a virtual presentation in our resource zone talking about scholarships, the search itself, cover letters, if you need letters of recommendation, the application, and writing a winning essay that you can check out, again, on our website at icansucceed.org. And then to wrap it up here, there's a lot of information in one setting. If you need any help after tonight, these are the places that you can go for free along the way. Your school counselors. Ever have questions, looking for scholarships, any questions at all with the college process, talk with your school counselors. I know if they're not sure of something, they'll be able to contact the colleges or somebody that will be able to guide you in the right direction to get those questions answered. If you're dealing with an admissions or financial aid counselor closely at a school, I used to be an admissions counselor before this job at a private school here in the state of Iowa. I would contact your admissions counselor first, even if it's a financial aid question. If they can't answer it, they're going to be able to find out an answer for you and get back to you on that. And sometimes the questions you might have are college specific, so they might be the only ones, the colleges themselves, that can answer that question for you. And then at ICANN, that's our toll-free number and website. Any questions at all that you have, don't hesitate to contact us. We've even got a newer system we're just starting right now that I don't have listed up here where you can go online, and we're not always available. It's newer for us, but a way that you can ask questions and chat if somebody is available too on our website as well. So, but we will either answer your question or, again, guide you in the right direction to where get that question answered. So I really appreciate the time that you have taken to listen to my presentation today. And if you have any questions at all for us, please don't hesitate to contact for us. The last thing I'll just mention is, if you don't remember anything else within this presentation, remember the one thing. During the student's senior year, make sure you submit the FAFSA form by the earliest priority date of any colleges that a student is looking at. That is still the best way to ensure that they get the most financial aid coming to them. Everything else can be answered after that, but we need you to initially get in the FAFSA form and get it in the timely manner that you need to. By doing that, you're going to put the student in the best position possible to get the most aid coming to them. Thank you very much, and good luck with this process.